Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is Dave on Tech and today we'll be taking a look at the iPod Nano 6. After my last video from last week where I did a review of the iPod Nano 7, a few people have asked me to also do a review of the iPod Nano 6 because this was quite a unique iPod and yeah, let's have a look. Oh yeah, and by the way, only 3% of people watching my videos are actually subscribed to the channel. So I would highly appreciate it if you guys took a second to subscribe. It's completely free and yeah, it helps the channel a lot since I'm just starting out. So as always, thank you so much for the support. But back to the iPod. So this iPod was actually quite controversial because it was a huge design departure from the previous iPod Nano, which was the iPod Nano 5. And yeah, you can clearly see the differences here. The iPod Nano 6 actually dropped the click wheel. I mean, the entire iPod is the size of the click wheel, so yeah, there's no way they could have fitted that. It also dropped the hold switch. It also dropped the video camera. Yeah, the video camera was very bad, but at least it had one. So yeah, this was quite a huge design change. And a lot of people disliked it, but at the same time, a lot of people loved the new form factor because it was very small, it was very portable, and it was the size of the Apple Watch. Oh yeah, and about the Apple Watch. When I say the first Apple Watch, many people think of this as the first Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Series 0 from 2015. But a lot of people would actually take watch straps, put them on the Nano, and actually wear the Nano as a watch, just like this. And yeah, because we had the clock lock screen, yeah, take a look at this. It was actually used as a watch. And just to further prove my point, have a look at this. If we go to the menu, general, date and time, clock face, take a look at how many clock faces you could choose from. Apple actually added these clock faces in a later update about 1 year after the Nano was first released. Because they've seen that so many people use them as watches, so they actually listened to the customers and added a bunch of watch faces. Oh, and by the way, just to further prove my point, let's have a look at these watch faces. And take a look at this one. Does it look familiar to you? Because yes, this watch face was actually introduced a few years later with the Apple Watch. Just take a look. This is a Series 8 or something, doesn't matter, but the watch face is pretty much identical. So yeah. And keep in mind, this was 5 years before the first Apple Watch. But yeah, design-wise, this was actually very similar to the iPod Shuffle 4. It was a tiny bit larger, and instead of a click wheel, you actually had a screen. It also had the same clip-on for your belt. So yeah, you could actually use this to clip it on your belt or a t-shirt or whatever. So this was quite a cool feature. On the top, you had the volume down and volume up button, but you had no physical play and pause button. You had the sleep wake button, which would of course turn the display off and turn it back on. And on the bottom you had the 30-pin connector and the headphone jack. And that was it, nothing on the sides. But let's have a look at software. So you could wake the iPod up by, of course, pressing the sleep wake button, and you would be taken to the watch face, and this would act as a lock screen, just like on the Nano 7 that I showed last week. And in order to unlock the iPod Nano, you would actually swipe right, and this would take you to the home screen. Of course, being a Nano, the first app was music. Although, fun fact, you could actually rearrange your apps by long pressing in order to enter shake mode. And you could simply rearrange your apps, just like on an iPhone. And once done, you would click the sleep wake button and you would be taken to the home screen. But yeah, back to the apps. Let's start with the music app. I'm trying not to cover the screen over here because it's so tiny. So yeah, sorry if my finger gets in the way sometimes. But yeah, you had Genius Mixes, playlists, artists, albums, songs, genres, composers, whatever. It's your typical iPod music app, nothing interesting. You can browse through your songs. And yeah, it was quite good. Let's play this song, for example. Yeah, you could play and pause. You could swipe left for more controls. And yeah. Now, the sound quality of this iPod wasn't honestly that good. It was similar to the Nano 7. It was nowhere near as good as the first Nano, for example, because yes, by this point, Apple have started, cutting costs here and there. So the DAC and the amp that they used in this iPod wasn't all that good, but honestly, it was fine for most people. especially since most people would use the included headphones with this iPod. So yeah, it sounded just fine. Oh, and by the way, unfortunately, I don't have the original box that this iPod shipped with, but you had a 30-pin connector, you had some headphones, and the iPod itself. But yeah, going back to software. The second app was a Now Playing app, which was a shortcut to what I've just shown you before, where it basically shows you whatever's playing right now. So yeah, you can look at this as a shortcut, not necessarily as an app. But the next app that we actually had was radio, because yes, this was one of the very few iPods that actually had radio. If I'm not mistaken, these three iPods were the only ones that actually had FM radio. So the iPod Nano 5, the iPod Nano 6, and the iPod Nano 7. But feel free to correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure these three iPods were the only ones to ever ship with FM radio. So let's go to the radio app, and once we open it, what do we see here? No radio signal, because yes, you had to plug in your headphones in order to get radio signal, because of the wire of the headphones would actually act as the antenna for radio. So yeah, let's just quickly plug in some headphones. And once we do that, yep, the radio app just started and we're free to search for, well, radio stations. So yeah, radio worked quite well actually, and this was quite handy for such a small device. Again, some people would simply strap this iPod on their wrist or on their, or I don't know, on their arm and just listen to radio, which was quite cool actually. But back to the apps. The next app that we have is the fitness app, which is actually an app made in collaboration with Nike Plus, just like on the Nano 7. And if we go to the app, you'll see that we actually can track two types of workouts, walks and runs. So let's see, for example, the walk app. This would actually use the built-in accelerometer of the iPod. So you could have it on your arm, on your wrist as a watch, or even in your pocket, if I'm not mistaken. And it was quite accurate. Now, of course, it wasn't as accurate as a modern Apple Watch, but hey, it was super tiny and you could track your steps and you didn't need a dedicated device for it. And for 2010, this was actually quite cool. Oh, and by the way, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but how do we go back to the home screen since we have no home button like on the iPod Nano 7? Well, you just swipe right to go back, and you simply keep swiping right until you reach your home screen. Well, let's have a look at what else do we have here. So the next step is the clock, which is actually the lock screen that I talked about. And a very cool thing is that not many people know about is you could actually take two fingers and simply rotate the clock face. Well, this would actually rotate the entire UI of the iPod Touch. But if you wanted to wear it in a different way, or if you wanted to, say, for example, have the buttons on the right-hand side while you were wearing it as a watch, you could actually do that. So that's a quite cool tip. Yeah, and as you can see, the entire UI rotated. So let's simply rotate it back. And it's actually upside down. And yeah, now we're back to normal. So let's have a look at the Photos app. Now, honestly, in my opinion, just like on the iPod Nano 7, this was quite a useless app. Even more so on the Nano 6, because the screen was super tiny, being only 2.2 inches in diagonal. That's even smaller than a modern Apple Watch. So yeah, this was the Photos app, but let's have a look at a photo. And yeah, you could double tap to zoom in, and I mean, I'm not sure who would watch their photos on such a small screen, but yeah, that's why I say it was useless. Because for example, let's bring up the same photo on my Apple Watch, and yeah, you can tell the quality is much worse on the Nano, and the bezels are much larger, and so yeah, this app was quite useless. And no, you couldn't swipe back, because swiping left would actually change the photos. You actually had to tap on the screen and click this icon on the top left hand corner. And now, going back to the home screen, we also had podcasts, which again, you had to sync through iTunes. Oh, and in case I forgot to mention this, you couldn't actually use Spotify or Apple Music, of course, on this iPod. So in order to get your music, photos, podcasts, or anything else really, you had to sync your iPod with your computer. But yeah, going back to the home screen, let's have a look at the settings app. So if we go to About, you can actually see the capacity of the iPod. You can see how many songs we have. Yeah, this was the 8 gig. If I'm not mistaken, this was the base model. You also have some settings for music, like shake to shuffle, which was quite a gimmick. You can adjust the EQ, the volume limit, crossfade, or whatever. And in general, you could adjust the brightness of the iPod. You could choose a wallpaper, and you had quite a few to choose from. Quite a lot more than on the Nano 7. You also had some options for the home screen. You could actually change the size of the icons that would show up on the home screen. So you could have small icons or large icons. Let's have a look at how that looks. So this was the setting with the large icons. Now, honestly, I preferred the option where you had smaller icons, as more of them could fit on your screen. But, you know, Apple giving you the option to have larger icons was quite good. So yeah, let's just quickly set it back to small icons, and you could actually choose which apps you wanted to have on your home screen from this settings page. So for example, if you didn't use photos, you could simply untick it and it wouldn't show on your home screen. But going back, you could also adjust the date and time, and just like I showed you, you could choose a different clock face. You also had a few accessibility options, and of course you could set your language. And by the way, you might have noticed that the battery has been draining quite quickly. The iPod was almost at full battery when I started the video like 20 minutes ago. So yeah, the battery is getting quite bad on these because they're getting 15 years old. Apple actually quoted 24 hours of music playback, if I'm not mistaken, when they were brand new, but nowadays if they last for a few hours, it's perfectly fine. Changing the battery on these is quite difficult, to be honest. Not as bad as on the iPod Nano 7, but it's still very difficult. Much harder than on a modern iPhone, for example. But yeah, that was the settings app. And on the final page, we have some shortcuts for the music app. So you could go directly to your songs, for example, or you could go directly to, say, I don't know, your artists. So yeah, these weren't actually apps. They were just shortcuts. So the iPod Nano 6, do I recommend it in 2025? Well, yes and no. This is quite a cool device and it brings back a lot of nostalgia for people, including me. And it is quite usable today as a music player or a radio player. But you had no Bluetooth, you couldn't connect your AirPods or any Bluetooth headphones or speakers. But yeah, in my opinion, while this iPod was actually very cool as a watch, it wasn't all that successful, because take a look at these two other iPods. The iPod Nano 5 before it had a much larger screen, and it also had the click wheel. And the iPod Nano 7 after it also had a much larger screen, which was touchscreen compared to the iPod Nano 5, and you also had a home button. So yeah, if you take a look at it, this iPod didn't have as much functionality as these two other iPods, but it was quite cool because it was super tiny and many people loved it exactly because of that. It was quite a weird iPod. I mean, it wasn't as weird as the Shuffle 3, which had literally no buttons or touchscreen, but we don't talk about that here. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the iPod Nano 6, and if there's any other iPod that you would like to see next. And with that said, this was Dave on Tech, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.